Hello everyone. Here in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to work with components. And this is going to be at least a 15-minute video, and I'll be explaining everything needed for you to master how to go about creating components and all of Figma's component properties. Here in this tutorial video, we are going to be looking at how do we go about creating button components. I believe by now we have like a basic knowledge of auto layout. If you don't, I'm going to be sharing you a video that covers that. But this, you need to understand the components for the button components we're about to be creating right now. So first of all, we'll go, right ahead in creating a button. And here I have my button already. And the next thing I'll be doing here is to apply auto layout. And to apply auto layout, you simply press Shift A to apply auto layout to your button. Now, what I will do here is to give this my button a fill. I don't have any color saved here, so I'm just going to click on this. And let me pick a color around blue. All right, so here I have my button. Okay, and let's add a corner radius to this. Let's just give this here a soft corner radius of 8. And we have something as simple as this. And I could also come over here and adjust my padding for this particular button. Let me just adjust the horizontal padding, keep that 16. And here we have this. Now I always love to rename my layer, and I'll rename this frame for this button, and I'll call this button. So here we have our button. We just created a button. Now, how do we make certain items a component? But before I get to that, let's explain what exactly is a component. Now, a component simply are reusable elements, which can be used as templates while designing. So take, for example, one way to maintain consistency in your design is by using components. Now, you could actually have a design where you get to have lots and lots of buttons. It doesn't make sense that you get to create a button every single time you need a button. You can simply create your button, make that a component, and whenever you need a button component, you simply call it, and immediately you have that button component wherever you need it in your design. Now, back to the last question. How can we make a certain element a component? Very simple. I'm going to show you the long way and the short way. The long way here is you right click and you click on create component, and that's it. The short way here is you simply select the element which you want to make a component, and in your design tab at the top right section, you're going to see this button here, these 4 diamonds. When you hover on it, you can actually see it says create component. So you click on it and you have components. Now, how can you tell that this right here is a component? Now, the moment you click on create component, you actually notice that the highlight for this particular button element becomes purple. This basically allows you to know that what you have right here is a component, or whenever you have a duplicate of a component, which is an instance, this also allows you to know what this right here is either a component or an instance. Okay. Now, what exactly is an instance? Let me delete this right here. I want you to take note of in the layer section here, when you have your main component, you can see this right here is my main component. Can you simply see how your main component looks like? So you can call this your main component or the master component. Now you can see here in your layer that this right here has what? It has 4 diamonds. Now this is one way for you to be able to know the main component or the master component. Now right here, I am going to duplicate this particular master component. Now what we have right here, a duplicate of a main component or a clone of a main component is actually called an instance. Okay, and you can actually see right here where we look at the icon or the icon or this particular symbol that you actually have right beside the button. You can see that what this right here is different. It's just a single diamond. This here signifies that this right here is an instance. And I love to classify the relationship between a main component as an instance as a parent and child relationship. So I'm just going to quickly type that here, parents. And for this right here is a child. All right. Now, what do I mean by, this right here are both, parent and child? Now, this here is what we'll do. I'm going to create, more duplicates or more instance of my components. So let's get to create at least two of this, or maybe three. Okay. Now, when we talk about the parent and child relationship, what it simply means is the child right here is simply collecting or inheriting every single attribute from the parent component. Okay, the child or the instance is simply what's inheriting every attribute, which the main or the master component which it has, which is basically what the parent. So what do I mean by that? You can look at our main components or our master component. You can see it has properties like the colors, attributes like the colors, attributes like the button label, attributes like the corner radius, and once we come over here and let's say I changed my fill color this time around to something different. Do you see what happens? You can see immediately as I'm making those changes in my parents component, the child component is also inheriting every change I have done on the parent component. If I should also come right here and say, let this right here be continue, you can also see what's happening here. It's also what's affecting the child component. All right. If I come here and say get started, you can see same thing. If I click on the button components and I, let's say I make this right corner radius here to be 24, you can see it becomes perfectly curved. Now, this is it. A duplicate or a clone of your main or master components. That particular instance inherits every single thing from the parent components. But look at what's going to happen right now. I'm going to pick one of these button, right? These instances. And I'm going to make some changes here. I'll come right here and I'm going to change the color. Okay? I've literally changed the color. Now, the moment you actually make a modification to the attribute of an instance, automatically you're already disassociating a particular attribute from the parent component. So what do I mean? The moment I come right here and I change the color for this particular instance, the fill color of this button for this particular instance, if I should come right here to my master component or my main components, and I get to change the color of this right here to, let's say, something around orange. Right now, can you see what's currently happening here? You can actually tell that this second button is not changing. Why? Because of what? The moment we modify or make changes to that particular fill attribute, or simply what dissociated that particular, we're no longer inheriting that particular field attribute from the parent component. Now that doesn't mean if we make any changes, take for example the corner radius, if I revert back to 8, you can see it still changes on this. That is because of what? We did not change the corner radius for this particular instance button. Okay, so I believe this right here explains how to go about creating a component very, very easily. Okay, so now we have talked about how to create a component. We've talked about the duplicate of a component, which is basically an instance, right? We have all of this covered. Now the next thing we're going to be doing here is we're simply going to be talking about properties of a component. Now, components have 4 main properties, and they go as variants, they go as texts, boolean, and swap. Okay, and I'm going to be explaining these properties. So we're going to be creating a very, 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 very a more elaborate button components. Now, as we all know, buttons have different states. Button has different types, right? Buttons could also contain different text label. Buttons could also contain icons. So we're going to be using all of these properties or attributes that a button could have, using Figma components, properties to create all of this right here. Now, I would simply, maybe we should just, I'll simply delete this, okay? I'll have this cleared out. And what we'll be doing next now is we are going to look at how can we create this component. So I'll come right here and I'm click on this button component we have here. Okay. Now when I click on this right here, you can actually see this. Now whenever you select a component, or an instance, for you to be able to, format or configure that particular component, you're going to see all of the information always at the top section here, right, underneath your design tab. So if I come right here, you can see I have this right here that says property. If I come over here and I click on this, you can see we have different properties to create. Like I told you, we have variant, we have text, we have boolean, and we have instance swap. Okay, now let's do this. Let's do this, guys. So first of all, let's talk about variants. Now, like I said before, buttons could have different variations. You could have a small button, you could have a large button, you could have a button with a different color, like a filled button, you could have an outline button, right? You could have different types of button. Now, for you to go about creating that, what do we do in cases like this? Do we necessarily have to always get to create different? So do you have to do something like this? I come over here and then I have my, let me see, outline button. So and then I'm trying to create an outline button right now. Okay, so we have something like this. I add my stroke, I change the color of my stroke to white, probably give it some corner radius. Now and then, do you need to do this necessary? So I come over here and then I type out outline button and then make it a component. Right, now you can see here you do not necessarily need to create all of this. All of this right here are all buttons. Do I need to create all of this? So I have field button, I have outline button, I have primary button, or I have small, that is literally so much. Now in the cases like this right here, where you have different variations of a button, all you need to do is take advantage of the Figma component property, which is basically what's creating variants. So let's look at how I can actually get to create my outline button directly in this. So I'll click on this right here and I'll simply delete this. Right, now if I click on this where I have this button, now you look over here, can you see this right here? You can see you have what we call add variants. Okay, you have what we call add variants. Now when you click on this right here, this is what happens. You already have a duplicate of this component you actually created here, and you can actually style this. So you can actually come over here and style this to an outline button. Now another approach you can actually take here is you can actually click on this where you have your property, and I can come here and click on variants. Now when you do that, what happens here is it simply converts your button. So look at this right here. I want you to know something here. Here you have a single component with no variants. The moment you come right here and you click on add variant, this is what happens here. You now have what? You now have a component set. Now what's a component set? A component set actually is the same thing as a component, but a component that actually contains different or more than one variant, right? It's a component with multiple variants. Okay, now in this case here, the best way to go about adding your variant is this right here. This is the best way. There's none of you stressing yourself clicking on this. This is like a long process, because once you click on that, you simply convert your button component to a component set, and then you have to click on this right here and then add another component. So this is literally this is stressful. Okay, this is really what's stressful. So all you have to do right here is very simple. Click on your components, right? Come over here and add a new variant. And now I'm going to style this second variant to look very similar to my outline button. But take note of something here. You can actually see here we have this here saying property 1, and we also have a random value here called variant 2. But no worries, we'll come to this. Let's first of all style this button. Now here I'm going to come over to my field and I'm going to turn off the field. Rather, I'll give this here a stroke and give this here a field of white. So this right here is my outline button. Maybe I should also go about changing the color as well. So let's say I want to, give this a different color, something different. Let's say I want to give it something like this right here for the outline button. Now we have this, okay? Now we have this. Or maybe okay. Let's leave it this way because of, my background color. So let's leave it, as it is, which is this right here. Oops. Okay, so we will have the field. Yes, let's give it this right here. Okay. Now, when I click on this right here, you can see I have property one and this is random variant. Now, one thing you need to note right here when you have a component set is this. You need to ensure that every variant is properly named, like the value for every variant is properly named. Okay. Now in this case here, one difference we have between this right here is the type of button. This right here is a default button, or you can call it or your field button, and right here we have what an outline button. But we have to clearly state that out right here. Why do we need to state that out? Now if I get to call my button, okay, so here I have my button. Now this is more reason why you have to name your variants appropriately. Now when I get to call this variant right here, if I want to get to switch this here to my outline, it's very simple. You can see I have property one. Property one is not clear. Property one doesn't give me a clear description of what I'm simply trying to choose. Also, when I click on the value here, I have variant 2. You can see this right here is simply not clear. I don't understand what variant 2 is. So let's get to name our property properly. So I'm going to delete this right here, or simply we can leave that right there. Now come right here to our component set, and I'm going to come over here, click on my main component. All right, or yeah, basically just choose this right here, or whichever. You can do this in two ways. You can click over here, the main component, and I need to change this property 1. It can be called property 1. So I can actually call this right here type, right? This right here, what type of button is this? Now I have this right here, clear and done. Then I can actually come here to my field button, right? Or I can call it my default button, whichever I want. I think I'll leave it as default, okay? I think I'll leave that default. Or you can actually call it, let's say, your field or primary button, okay? I don't think there's need to add the button, so let's just call it primary. Okay, so we have this right here. And then for the second what you have right here, so this is my outline button. So I'll come here, I'll click on outline. Okay, now when I come here to my instance, when I call my button component, you can see how easy it is for me to choose. Oh, this is my button component. The type of button is what is my primary. Oh, I don't want my primary, I want the outline button. And you have this right here, simple. You can see this is clear and very, very detailed. Anyone can simply understand how to navigate or configure this particular button component. Now let's move over to the next component property. We've talked about variants, which is what we just did right here. Now let's talk about or maybe we should do more. I think we should do more variants. Okay, let's do more variants. So let's take, for example, I also would like to add more. Okay, I would like to add more. Maybe I want to add another property of size. Now you can do it this way. Now for me, you can simply come right here and click on this, and it just adds this right here. But I always love to have my components properly organized. And in terms of size, I'm just going to expand this a little bit. Okay, let me move this aside, expand a little bit, and I would simply click on these two, and I am free to duplicate this. So we have this right here, a duplicate. Okay, now here I want to create still a button component, but this is variant here. The difference here is a matter of size, a smaller size. Right, this is a new property. So what I'll do here is let's get to configure that right away. Okay, so let me click on this right here, and let me just adjust this here. Probably just give this here 8. Right. By the way, feel free to adjust. This is just me, just using this as an example. And as for the text, let's say I want to go ahead and give this. By the way, this right here is actually small already. Okay. I think what I'll do here is, as for this other ones we have right here, let me get to update the text, right? Rather, so I have this right here 16, and I have this right here 24. So I have this right here. Okay, cool. Okay. All right, so here we have, the large and small button. Now, if I click on this right here, now you can see we simply created duplicates. So here, so what we have right here, we have the property type. But when you click on this right here, this button here type shouldn't be different. This button type here should also be primary because that is the type of button this is. Similar for this as well, to the type of this right here also should be outlined. Shouldn't be different because it's the same type of button. But when I do this right here, can you see something? It currently says here the property and values of this variant are conflicting. Change the applied values on this variant to resolve this. Now, in simple term, what this means is Figma currently sees this variant as the same thing. Now, it's saying, oh, I have a button component with a variant primary. Simply means it's currently seeing two primary here. And it's difficult for Figma when you say you want to switch right here and you want to call primary. Figma currently is unable to tell, which of this, which of the primary. So right now it's just giving you, the larger, but you simply have more here. All right, so how do we fix this? Now, this easiest way to fix this right here is this. Now here we have a property of size. That is one difference between this variant and this right here. The type is the same thing. So how do we add a new property to this right here? How do we do that? Very simple again. All you have to do is what? Click on your button component. And right here, I'll come over here, I'll click on the plus, and I am going to come over here and click on the variant. Now I'm going to introduce a new variant property. Now the name of this property would be size, okay? And as regards the value, I will just give this right here size of small, okay? So we can have, just give it size of small, okay? By the way, this could be anything, all right? If you want to leave it as default, you know what, let's give it default, all right? So you just get this what goes on here. I'll click on create property. Now we are still having this, error here, but at the same time, you can see we have what? We have a new property that has been introduced, right? A new variant property that has been introduced. And you can see here, which is what size. Now we still have this error because, these two right here still has the same size. You can see primary default. If I click on this as well, you can see primary default. It has to be distant. Now, even if you have a set of twins that are identical, there are still certain properties amongst them that is different. For example, their names, totally different. Okay, so it has to be the same thing as well too. On Figma, there has to be a clear difference between all variants. Now let's get to make that change. So right here where we have get started, this right here, I'll simply say this is my large button, okay? So where I have my size, I'll come right here and say what's large, okay? Now you have that done. Similar for this as well too, I'll say what? Large, right? And you can see the moment to that, we actually want to resolve that issue. Now let's come over here to this one here and give it the right value for the size. I'll say small, right? Similar for this right here as well too, I'll say small. And guys, we have this resolved. Now if you come to this instance we have right here, you can see I can easily toggle between my different sizes of button. Right, so we can see how we can easily toggle between this right here. Beautiful. Okay, so this right here is the variance property. Take note of that. Now second component property we have here is, let's see, is text. Right, beautifully, it's text. Now if you look at our buttons, we currently have this text here that says get started, right? Every button definitely is going to need a label. Now there are cases where you have buttons with just icons alone. That is understandable, right? But here, this button here, they all have text, right? So how we need to be able to format, the text using our component property. So how do we do that? Very simple. Now first thing first is we're going to create our text property, okay? So come here, click on the plus icon and click on what's on text. Now here, I'll call this what? Label, okay? I'll call this label. And in terms of value is what value you want to have for the label. Let's just say this here what we call button. And we click on create property. Now, we've actually added this right here. Now, if you can see, we have this caution sign. Right, you can see this caution sign. You say, what does it say? You say not used within the component, simply telling us that we actually have not used this text property called label that we created in here. Now let us see how can we apply this text property within our components, our button component sets. Very simple. Now because that's the text, we'll come right here and I'm going to click the text I have inside my button component. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be clicking or selecting all the text I have right here, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I believe you know how to select this right here. Now the next thing I'll do here is, you can see right here, it simply says what, 4 selected. But aside from that, you can see here I have this value that says get started, which is simply highlighting my button text here. Now also right beside it, I have this icon. This icon says apply variable slash property. Now remember, we created what, a text property. We're going to be applying that property to this text. So we'll come here, we click on it, and you can see here I have properties in button, which is what, label. Beautiful. And once you click on that right here, do you see what happens, guys? You can see that it has applied all our button. It has applied the button property to to the labels. You can see it right here. Very beautiful. And you can also see that change here in our instance. Now you might ask, okay, this button component that we've simply created here, how do we use it? Now I'll show you guys. Now back to our instance. You can see we have our instance here. Now can you see we now have a new property here that says label? Remember, we created type, we created size, now we have button. Now if you want to change this button text, now if we didn't have this right here, you most likely we have to select the text and then double click and start editing, correct? Yeah, and that is a long way to do that. Now that we have our text property, I can simply update my text directly from my component section here. So I could say, come right here and say what, let's change right here to what, to get started. Okay, and you can see here, I easily updated the button text right away with ease, very, very easily. Okay, so this right here, what is our text property in components, right? This is what our component text property. Now, what's the next property that we have? I'm clicking back on my main components. Now, the next component we have right here is boolean. And I believe everyone here did math at some point or logic at some point. Now, what exactly is boolean? Boolean actually, is a data type that gives the value of 1 and 0, or true and false. What does that simply means? Booleans help indicate the presence of something or absence of something. Now, one thing we can actually do here to implement the Boolean property is, as we all know, every button requires a text label. But in case of you don't want to use a text, within a button, you could also use an icon, right? So in this case here, let's get to add an icon directly inside our button component, guys. Now, I don't have any icon right here, so you know what? Let me go look for some. I'm going to be using a plugin, and this plugin, let's use feather icons, right? Let's use feather icons, and then let me search for arrow. All right. Now, right here, I am going to be getting arrow right. Okay, and yep, here I have my arrow. This is it right here. And for the sake of this, I'm just going to change the color of this right here to white. All right, so it's similar to our button components. Now here we have the arrow. We need to have this arrow in our component. Now guys, please do not make this error. Whenever you have a button component, take note please, whenever you have a button component, or whatever type of components you are creating, irrespective, so long as it's a component, please do not just drag in an icon, right, directly inside. Don't just add in an icon, a flat icon the way it is. Whenever you want to use an icon in a component, ensure that icon, you've actually also made it a component. Okay, so that means you're going to bring in the instance of that icon in. So this is what I mean here. So I'll come right here and I'll click on create component. Now this icon here is a component. Okay, take note, right now it is a component. So what I'll do here is I can simply duplicate this, right? Right, you can simply duplicate this, or we're going to move in this instance inside here. Now the reason for this right here is this: when you have a mere component, so let me click on this right here and I would simply detach. Now what this means here, when you detach an instance, you simply disconnecting or removing that auto layout, that component's property from it. So if I click on detach instance, it is no longer a component anymore. Now this is it right here. When you have a simple vector icon, this right here is just a simple vector icon, right? It's not a component. You can see here that we cannot swap, you don't have an option to swap, this component property we have right here. But, we'll come to this later on. So I would just delete this and I would duplicate this once more, okay? Now we have this right here. Now you can see whenever you have an instance of a component, you have an option here to swap. So if I click on this right here, I can quickly switch between this component or this instance to this. Why? Because of what? It's a component. You can what? A component has a property of what? Of swapping. You can swap an instance for another instance. Okay? Right, so let's do this right away. So what I'll do here now is I'm just simply going to copy this icon and I will select this two, the large ones, or you know what, let me select everything and I'll just do Ctrl V and I'll simply what, paste those icons directly in here. So you can see we have this right here. Okay, now right here I would simply try to resize this a little bit, right, the icons. So I'm just going to try and resize this a little bit. Okay, so I would scale this all the way down to, let me give this 20. Okay, so we have something that's as small as this. All right, so having done that, remember this is just a placeholder icon. Okay, now having done that, we have this right here. For the small button as well, I would also scale it all the way down to 16. Let me just scale it a little bit smaller, 12. Okay, so we have this right here. Also, let me adjust the gap between these two buttons. Remove my in. Let me just give this here 4. Okay, between this and this right here. All right, so moving on. Now that we have this done here, we have our button. Now there are cases where, take for example, I do not want a button here, right? I don't want a button here. I just want my text, I just want my text, the button label. I don't want any icon. Now, how we would literally do that if we don't have the boolean property is we'd have to come here, select the icon, and then hide it. Now, this is a long approach to do this right here. I want to be able to, configure that right here from my components where I can simply toggle off, this icon. Now, how do we do that? Very simple again. What we do right here is this. I'll click on my main component and I'm going to create a new boolean property. I think one thing I'll do here is I need to have 2 icons. I would love to have 2 icons here. Okay, but let's do for one first. Okay, so I'll come here, I'll click on this button, and here I'll click on create a new property, and I'll select the boolean property. Now here I have this, boolean. The name of this right here, I'll call this my trailing icon. Trailing icon. Okay, now what do I mean by trailing icon? Trailing icon is actually the last button. So if this here were to have 2 buttons, if I had a button before my label, that would be my leading icon. Trailing icon is the button that comes next. So the first trailing icons before your text, and then the last section there is your trailing icon. So leading icon, first icon before any other thing, trailing icon, the last option you have right there. So I'll come here and I'll click on create property. Okay, in terms of the value here, I'll leave this as true. The reason why I'm leaving this as true is because my icons here are present. You can see the icons are visible, so which means it is on. So let's leave the word as true. Then come here and click on create property. Okay, now as we all know, you have this right here, simply telling what this component has not been used. This property has not been used within the component. So let's apply this trailing icon, to property to our icons. So how do we do that? It's very simple. We'll come right here and simply select all our icons. So come here, click on this, and we'll move over to appearance. Remember, appearance is one of the places where you can actually toggle off, your icons. Now here when we have our appearance, you also have the icon again. The icon that says apply variant or property. So what do? We click on this, and then we'll simply apply our trailing icon, boolean property there, and voila, we have this right here. Now how do we use this? Now if I come here to my my button instance, you can see right here what I have my trailing icon, visible, and I can come here and toggle it off. This is what happens when I turn it off. The icon now becomes hidden, and when I toggle it on, it becomes visible. Okay, so we're going to create in one more example in terms of boolean property. Let's get to add one more. Okay, so let's say I want to add another icon here. So let me launch my feather icon, and I'm still going to let me use the arrow left this time around. Okay, and let's get to close this. I think to explain something more, okay, yeah, let's leave it this way. Remember, we'll make it a component, and let me just get to change the color of this right here to white. FFF, and I'm just going to copy this right here. So just there's a bit of duplicating, right? Just copy the main component, and I would simply select all of this. Now this is a long way of doing it. If you want to select all items in all variants in your component set, simply click on your main component set, press enter, you have all of this selected, and Ctrl V. Now we have it right here, and I'm going to use my arrow key to move it to the left side. Now I would simply just resize, right? Remember this here we gave the size of 20, so here it's already 20 already. And for the small icons, I would also resize this as well to what size did I give my buttons? Was it 14? Yeah, I think so. Oh, 12 instead. So let's give this right here, the icons there to 12. So we have this right here. Now we are going to create a boolean property for our leading icon. I hope you do remember. This is your leading icon. This is your trailing icon. Okay. So let's do it right away. So come right here, click on the plus icon. We'll create a new boolean property, and here we'll call this what our leading icon. Okay, and I will leave the value as true, and then click on what create property. Now what we'll do next now is we'll simply select all of these icons, all of them, right, all the leading icons, and we're going to apply the leading icon property. Remember, come all the way down to appearance, you click on apply variant or property, and simply choose the leading icon, and we have that here, guys. Now so here it becomes very easy for us to toggle. I don't want my leading icon, I can toggle it off, right? I don't want trailing icon, I can toggle it off. So you can see how easy it is for us to have this done. Now you could also create, similar for label. Let's say you don't want label, you don't want to add, have like a text. You just want this, to just be an icon. You can also get to do that as well too. Okay. Now let's talk about the next component property, which is instance swap. Okay, which is instance swap. Now here we currently have this icons. Now there are cases where I would definitely want to use something different. Okay, I want to use an icon, a totally different icon in this case here. How do we do that? How can I do that? Now here, if I want to swap this, I most likely would have to come right here. Remember I showed you guys how to swap, remember? And then I basically, search, and then swap out my icon. But right here, I don't have any, I don't have any icon that we want to swap for, aside from the arrow left and right. I want something more. You know what's going to happen here? I'm going to create or bring in more icons. So let me launch my feather icon. Let me search for lock. I'm going to bring that in here. So I have lock. All right. Let me search for more. Let's search for download. Yeah, I have download. Right, so I'm just bringing in as many icons as possible. All right, let me also bring in my chevron icon. Yeah, chevron, arrow down. So we have this right here. Let me get to bring in more. What other icon can I get to use in this case here? Add. Yeah, let's get to add this right here. Okay, cool. All right, guys, so here I have I've literally introduced about 5 new icons. So we have this right here. Okay, 5 new icons. Now remember, for us to be able to swap, you can see here, these icons right here is just, a plain um, vector icon. If I want to get to swap out this icon I have right here, you can see it's not showing here. Why? Because they are not a component. So let's make them a component. Now if I come over here and I select all of this, right, and I want to make all of them a component. Now please, whenever you select more than one item which you plan on making each individually a component, don't just click on this right here. When you do this, it's going to select all of them and make it as a single component. What you do here is you click on the arrow drop down and click on what creates multiple components, and then you have this right here. Each of them right now are a component. Okay, now so take for example you want to swap this. You literally have to come here, click on this, and then swap. You can see you have all the icons now showing. If I click on this right here, you can see what happens. It has literally what swapped, that's here. So let's get to make those changes. So let me click on this, and yeah, okay, so we have this right here. Now how do we add our instance swap property? Very simple. Now if you look here, we have two icons. Remember, we have our leading icon, we also have a trailing icon. So I would be creating two swap property. Okay, we'll come right here and let's click on the plus icon. We'll have instance swap. I'll call this right here leading. Icon. Okay, leading icon. Now I get that this here is actually very, very similar to what we have right here, but this property type is actually different. Okay, so here it says here pick a value. All right, so I'll click on this arrow drop down and let's just leave it as arrow left. Since this is our leading icon, let's just leave it the same way it is. Now you can see here, this here actually says choosing preferred value. Now what this simply means here is this. Now if you want to have you want to have like options, readily options available the moment you want to swap, so you won't have like a group of icons to be readily available whenever you want to swap, you can actually come here and add those preferred values. But you know what, let's just hold on this right here so you actually see what I get to mean later on. So I'll come right here and I'll create property. So we have here our leading icon. So you know what, I think I will change the name for this here. So let me come here and I will say has leading icon. So all right, so we have that changed. Okay, so here as well too, I would say has trailing icon. So just something as simple as this here. So it's just a question. Remember, boolean. Has leading icon? Yes. Has trailing icon? Yes or no. Has boolean icon? Yes or no. Okay, so here we have the leading icon itself. Now let's do the same thing again for our trailing icon. So come here, click on instance swap, and I'll call this here trailing icon. And let's get to just pick. We'll just pick the arrow right, since that's our trailing icon here, and then click on what create property. Now you can see the caution here indicating that what we haven't used this in our component. So let's come right here and let's select all leading icons. 1, 2, 3, all leading icons. Now for you to apply the instance swap property, remember this stuff are actually located where you have those property alter options. In this case here, to swap, you can see this is where you normally swap, and right there you have the icon that says what apply swap property. Now when you click on this right here, you can see here I have what my leading icon, and I will click on this. You can see we have that done. Next we'll do same thing as well too for our trailing icon. So come right here, click on it, and then we'll also apply the same thing. Right, come right here, click on this, and select what your trailing icon. And guys, we are all good, like literally all good. Now let's see here, I am going to create several variations. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this. All right, I'm going to create like 3 or 4 of this. All right, so let's see here, I would say we have all this right here. So let's see here, I literally do not want to have my leading icon. Okay, so let's see, I'll turn this off here, no leading icon. Here I'll change my label. So let's see, download. Okay, so we have download. And also we need to change this icon. Remember we have a download icon here, by the way. So what do? I'll come here to have my trailing icon. You can see here, hash trailing icon is toggled on, and you have your trailing icon here visible. By the way, if you want to get to change, the location of this right here, you can simply do that right here. So I'll come here, click on this, and I'll simply just, drag this right below trailing icon. So it's very, very beautiful this way. All right, so if I come back here, so you can see here, I have the trailing icon underneath this option here. So if I click on this right here, you can see it's going to show me a list of all the instances, all the icons that I have instance, whether you have your button component, everything's going to be listed here. And here I have the download icon. I'll simply want to just click on this. And you can see here, guys, I have my download option. All right, maybe let me just change the color of this right here to white. Okay, so it will be easy for us to just go right ahead. So you can see here I have what I have download. So let's say download file. So you can see, simple. Maybe I want to create something else again here. Let me say lock account. All right, and let's just say this time around I want to have my icon in front. So I would simply turn off my trailing icon. Trailing icon is the last icon over there, so turn that off. And you can see when I turn it off, it simply hides this here. Right, very beautiful. So turn that off. Now I have my leading icon. I'll come over here. Let's want to get the lock icon. You can see when I click on this right here, you can see lock account. Very beautiful. We could do the same thing as well to maybe I want to have add friends. Or if I want to make that to be my leading icon, you can see I can simply come over here and you have this right here, add friends. So very, 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 very simple. All the icons we have right here, okay, we have down. So let's want to see, scroll down. See more. So you have all of this right here, or scroll down. You have, a whole lot of options right here. So you can see how we are literally able to format this button component using, the text property, the variant, the boolean property, and the rest. And by the way, guys, let's also get to filter the variant as well too, and see how remarkable this gets to be. So let's see if I highlight this that we have right here, and let me also get to duplicate this. Okay, so we can see this right here. Let's change this here to what? Let's use C primary, but small. Can you see the change here, guys? Can you see the change here, guys? I could also do this as well for outline. Can you see? Can change right here to primary, so you can actually get to see all of these whole things right here, and how we are literally able to format or configure all of this right here, guys. You can also get to change the color. In this case, we want very, very easily to just go about. And guys, this is how we get to use the Figma components properties, how you go about creating components on Figma, and also how to use the Figma component property to make certain adjustment or configurations to your components. All right, so let me know if you have any questions. You can simply just message me. Right, so here is how we go. Now, an assignment I would love for you to do is to create a text field component. Play around it, create a text field component. This text field component should have different states: a default state, a typing state, an error state, a success state, right? Include icons as well to leading and trailing icons. Also include hints as well to your text field. I think this will be something very interesting, as a take-home assignment to get to work on. All right. So please let me know if you have any questions, and I will be dropping this file as well too for you guys to go through. All right. Ciao. Bye.